All right, guys, what is up? It is Stu. It's another episode of the What the Fuck Gym Talk podcast, and I've got my man Steve Pinkerton here. We're talking some gym real estate here. You're the only person I personally know that has taken on something this fucking large. Would you do me a favor just to set the context for everyone? I just want to go through the basic numbers of just so people can get a scope of the context of this place. What year did you decide or did you start the process of building this building?
We were 3 years in. So 2013, we had 2 years left in our original lease, and the land, that was when the market was starting to come back around and was starting to correct itself a little bit, the commercial side. Landlord came and said, hey, we're going to need to make some adjustments when we do our renewal. And I think I was paying like $3,600 a month at the time, and we were going to jump to $7,100 or $7,250 or something. I said, man, there's got to be a better solution out there. So we started to look. We looked for property for maybe 14, 15 months. And then 2014-ish, we started construction on this site right here.
So, 2014, when was it complete?
Oh man, it was a 29-month bloodbath.
Okay.
Between the weather, between the financing, between construction, anything that could have went wrong, it went wrong.
And so everyone listening, so this was a buy dirt and build, all right? So 29 months, over 2 years. What was your all-in cost?
2.6, call it 2.6.
2.6 all-in. Stats on the building. How large is the facility?
It's a 50,000 square foot footprint, but we've got a 30,000 square foot first floor and a 20,000 square foot mezzanine.
And then what is the outside, like acreage-wise, what do you have on the actual parcel?
We've got 4 acres on this lot, and then we bought the lot adjacent to it, and that is just under 3. At the time, we couldn't afford that lot, so I had a client that needed to park some money somewhere. He bought it, held it for 3 years, and then we did a deal to where at the end of 3 years, we agreed on a price. I could either take it or he can go sell it to someone else, and we took it.
So all in 4.3 acre, or how many?
All in 7.75. 7.75.
What's your plan on the other parcel?
Well, for a while, if I would even have mentioned anything, my wife would have left me. But now we rent to a church, and that church uses that lot as a parking lot, and so do we.
Yeah.
So they've came in, they cleared it, they graded it, they put a ton of gravel down. So they did all that for us because they needed the 190 spots of parking or whatever. In a perfect world, if let's say the church wasn't here, I would have put pickleball courts over there right away and just kind of wait and see what the rest of the area was. So yeah, nothing, as long as the church is here leasing space from us, we'll keep that and just sit on it and let it appreciate.
Jesus saves and Jesus pays, man. That's those guys, they have no problem throwing money at shit.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. So 50,000 square feet, the gym, the main operating entity when it came in here, how much was that for downstairs?
I had to have, as an owner occupier, you had to be 51% of not only the square footage, but also your rent roll.
Because you did SBA.
Initially I did SBA, but even when I refinanced, they still, in order to get the tax breaks for owner occupier, the truest requires me to be 51% of both.
Okay.
So on paper, we're 25,010 square feet for the gym, and that leaves me, 24,990 for the rental space.
Got it.
It's probably a little less than that, but it's close.
Just for everyone listening on this, a lot of people are like, hey, I want to do SBA. I want to buy a building. I'm good being the owner occupier there. You look at this is much more of like an investor type scenario. So that people like, well, how does both work? Like you could go in, and if you can get the SBA to sign off on this thing and you buy the property and you're the main tenant, but the second you're really playing more investor, you're going to just need the refi, have the other bank buy out the SBA because they're just not in the business of helping investors. It's meant for small business owners like us to kind of get their start. But this is, we were talking rent roll before. So this is 50,000 square feet. And then what is your monthly rent roll on this?
Just under 50,000. Our goal was 50,000. That was 8 years ago. I talked to some really smart guys and they said, hey, everybody doesn't ever pick a number. They don't pick a number of what that passive revenue needs to be. So you see people just chasing this ceiling that doesn't exist. And so 8 years ago, I said, man, if I could get to $50,000 in passive revenue from my rental income, that would be the number that we'd want. So I chased it for 8 years, and we were like 49,970. So we're right there. We're right at it.
On top of the revenue of the gym.
Yep.
And what's the gym? What's a good month for the gym right now?
Our goal is 88,000 a month in gross revenue, and if we can get that number to 25 to 30 in profit, then we're doing pretty good.
Okay. So, and I'm framing all this up for the scope of everybody. Like, again, like this, something like this, when Vitality at your old location that I saw, what were you doing monthly there? Like when you took this on and a bank's looking at you, they want to see a debt service coverage.
Yep.
You can't be doing $24,000 a month and then them to give you a thumbs up on a on a loan over $2 million. What were you doing in revenue then?
We were right around 50.
Okay.
We're around 50. We were really lean.
Yeah.
So they liked it, but the banks didn't understand. They don't understand the small boutique style gym.
Yeah.
They don't. They understand Gold's Gym, Planet Fitness, the big box gyms, and they're scared of those. Which
Sure.
rightly so. So there's so much education that had to take place of why it made sense, because we were, as a crow flies, you're a mile and a half down the street. No one's leaving. So every member that we have is coming with us. That revenue that we show, that's been consistent for 4 years, it's still going to be there. So that was the kind of the baseline that we tried to work off of, but it took a long time to get them comfortable with that.
Would you remember during that process with the financing, what was your biggest hurdle? What was the part? Because that's normally the part where I could be working with someone and we've got it and it's in the 25th hour, the fucking deal falls apart. Something doesn't check out. The underwriters are just like, I don't like this. And even the loan officer, because he wants his fucking payday on the loan, he can't force it through underwriting. What was your biggest? Did you have a moment where you had a scare like this wasn't going to work, or we got to switch up, we got to try a different bank?
Yeah, the crazy part was we went through 10 banks. So we went through that process, 10 banks. and that's why I always laugh when you see these, the dumb Instagram things where like, if it's meant to be, it's meant to be. It'll just fall into place, man. That couldn't be further from the truth, because if I was waiting for something to fall in my lap, we would never be here.
Yeah.
I mean, you're literally scratching and clawing and trying to jam that square peg in a round hole the entire time, because every time underwriting would come up, they'd have a couple questions, and then those couple questions would lead to like 10 more questions, and then you just get stonewalled after that. And then we just go through that over and over. In the process of going to a new bank, it's not like
you
BB&T.
can pick up the work that you had at the last one, bring it to the next guy. No, it's starting fresh over.
Start all over again, and then someone else comes into your business and asks different questions about all your numbers and all this, and it was a disaster. But I think that the Marine Corps for me made it an easier transition, because it made me so stubborn that once I got it in my mind that, hey, we're doing this, and I don't care who tells me no, we're going to figure it out. And finally we found a bank that they openly said that we were crazy, like it wasn't going to work. Even I love Marty, Marty Williams built this place for me. And I remember sitting with him. He's like, dude, are you sure this is what you want to do? Like, are you sure? And I said, yeah, because he knew what the construction was going to be. I didn't. I was so naive. He knew what this thing was what it was going to look like. He's like, bro, I hope you know what you're doing. I said, yeah, me too. And we started, and then right from day one, I think I had $600,000 into this project before one piece of steel went up. And I mean, when you're cutting check after check after check, and you're just burning into this, you've got an allotment of money that you need to build this whole project with, and you're 600,000 in, and you're like, man, we haven't
thrown shit up.
We haven't went vertical yet.
Yeah.
And that's what I try to tell people when I don't try and talk people out of it. I just want them to understand what they're biting off. And because now, sure, we're at the end of our 8th year at the new space. It's finally starting to make sense. Like the last 24 months, I've been able to be like, okay, you know what? Maybe this was a good idea. The previous 6 years were not like that. Every time you turn around, you're trying to fix this. You're trying to get a new tenant, solidified and kind of settled in. And every time a new tenant comes in, you're on the hook for, a couple $100,000 to get their upfit ready to go. Yeah. So it was just like this constant, as soon as you got comfortable, boom, more money coming out. And I always felt like I was writing all these big checks, and I was like, man, at what point do the checks start to come in where I can keep it? I mean, it was 6 years before that started happening.
A lot of people, especially in Charlotte, they know you, they know this building, they know the story, and it's like, oh, that dude's been playing whack-a-mole for whatever the 6-year period. And they're like, well, you got all these tenants. I'm like, you think people just showed up and all signed up on January 1 and all the leases run concurrently? No, they all go in, then one guy drops out, and fuck, I got to find that guy. Then another year goes by, and like, oh shit, I got to start thinking about them. Or someone wants to knock down a wall and take over the other suite, and so you okay it. and then they go out of business. Now you're like, fuck, I have this larger suite that's harder to lease. It's a never ending thing. And it's a job that you took on that was essentially, I mean, when you opened your gym, probably we could, and I would say this for myself, I had no business owning a business at that point, but you got in the landlord, and there's no like, not like you took a fucking course on landlord.
Yeah.
Like, it's something you have to go, you learn, and it's kind of like you use math as probably your best fucking, judge and your North Star. Does this mathematically make sense? Talk to other people who can help make decisions for you. Now, you're right. I generally tell people the same thing. I want to buy and build. Buy land, build. I'm like, it's probably a minimum of 300% more guaranteed than if we go and retrofit a current structure. There's a lot of good stuff. There's no parking at this structure. We can make parking here, things like that. You want an urban core location? Probably not happening because there's no fucking land in urban core. Like, where do we got to go to do this? Going back, and you've told me this before, but going back, you're at the first location. You have the money. You've been given approved to do a loan to do something in commercial real estate of the tune of over $2 million. Would you buy land and build again? I mean, knowing what you know now, it's easy to say, but yeah, you can even include that in. Like, would you buy and build? If
it was set up in a way that I could have multiple tenants the way that I've got here, if I could easily retrofit a space and have 2,500 square foot spots, I would buy an existing building all day long. It's tough because up here in North Charlotte, there was nothing. There was nothing here. There was no industrial areas you can go and find a space. And it's still kind of like that. There's huge distribution facilities, but there's nowhere with manageable spaces that you could really set up for a multi-tenant building. So if I had that, I'd rather retrofit and do it that way.
Because this is technically an industrial property, but everything you lease is retail.
Yeah.
Like you list those things as retail. And that's what I think a lot of people are like, fuck, who's going to come to my warehouse? I mean, this is right off the highway. I mean, like, you could not have picked a better site. What did the site selection look like for you?
I've still got a PowerPoint. I saw it the other day. There was 7 places that we were trying to decide, and I say we like it was a group of people. It was my wife and I. I'd go home and pitch my wife, and then I'd call my dad and be like, hey, I'm sending you this PowerPoint. Look at it. And he's got like 17 things going on. He's like, yeah, they all look good. But there was nothing up here, so I had it broken down into size and price per acre and where, what the streets were going to look like. And this was completely covered. It was wooded, and it was really hard to visualize. I walked it probably 30 times. It was so much steeper than what I had originally, because you look at it from the road, you're like, oh, it's pretty flat. And I just didn't want to get into a bunch of site work and grading. And so this wasn't one of my top choices. I liked it because of where it was off of 85. I just didn't like it for the site work. And when they cleared it off, we bought it. They cleared it off, and I was like, oh my gosh, it was so much worse than I thought. Like, because people could tell you, your engineers could say, oh, it's 40 feet from front to back, and you're like, oh, what's 40 feet look like? And then they took the trees out, and I'm like, so that's what 40 feet looks like. And I was like, oh man, there's gonna be a ton of dirt to move. So but there were so many spots to choose from, and now you look back, and man, it was just dumb luck. It was lucky to be here because we got the space next door. The other spot, you've got all the construction on, if you come up with the regional airport off of Derrida, they expanded to 4 lanes, so everybody was losing a ton of their frontage. This has worked out to be a really good spot for us.
That's, I did the same thing. I always go back and look at what were the other buildings I looked at to buy, or I toured or whatever, and I said no for one reason, whatever the reason was at the time, and it's like you go back and look and be like, I think there's only one of them where I was like, that would have fucking worked out really well too. But most of them, it was like, oh, I'm glad that didn't go the way that did. So you're in here now. How many total tenants?
We got 12.
Okay, 12 total tenants in here. How do you marry the gym's rent versus tenant rent? So what's the average square footage you're leasing at?
That's
like per square foot.
We're $24 out front, and then your interior spaces work off of just a gross lease, so we don't do a per square foot lease on the inside space. But the standalone spaces, the 4 spaces out front, they're between $22 and $24 to $26 a foot. And the issue we ran into with the gym is, again, we had to be 51%. Mm-hmm. So and really, you've got a company that owns the real estate and the gym pays the other company, so it's a pass through expense for us. We charge the gym, it's got to be $24,000 a month in order to make those numbers work.
Yep.
So really, that 50 doesn't take into account Vitality's rent that we pay.
Got it. Okay, so that 50 is completely outstanding with just your other tenants.
Yeah, I wanted to make sure that was a true passive number, and that to me is just a way to pad that number, and I could make that number whatever I want and say, oh yeah, I've got 50,000 in passive revenue, when you really don't. It's just that's a must have for the bank to write off on that mortgage.
So your current loan is with Truist. You've got, what was it, a 20-year AM?
No, well, when we refinanced, we did a 10-year, so I've got 3 years left.
Then a balloon,
and then I'll refinance again.
Yeah.
And I'll put everything together.
Hopefully,
yeah.
Because your first refinance was what, at 2.5? 2.5.
Yeah, like right now I'm at 2.5.
So you got to refinance in 3.
Yeah.
Because very similar. We're not going to see 2.5 probably. No. Not in 3 years. How do you start planning? Because I've had this same conversation myself. How do you start planning for, the operating expense of this place is instantly, with nothing else changing, instantly is going up just because of the interest rate. What is your plan on that? Or do you have enough margin that you're just going to accept the margin hit, or are you going to try to make up for it on the tenant side?
I think what I can do, I won't try and make up for it on the tenant side. The big thing that I'm trying to figure out is, how much does it make sense for me to pay down the debt? I understand why people leverage their debt. I understand that part of it. But me personally, my brain, my body doesn't work well with debt. I don't like owing people money. I don't like being held hostage by a bank. So a lot of times people are like, well, you need to carry that debt because it's, you can leverage it somewhere else. So there's a part of me that thinks that I can pay some of it off and create the difference.
Sure.
By just reducing my debt.
It reduces the principal.
But I don't know. I was just talking to one of the bankers last week, and we were joking around. I said, man, all this crazy stuff better pass in 36 months because we'll roll. There's a couple things. I've taken out some equity to buy a building back in Michigan and do some different things. Those will all get rolled into one and folded into one under one mortgage. That 2.4 that I still owe will really be 3.4, so that, I've got to be careful what that looks like. And I think for me, I'll probably wait another 18 months and see what the numbers look like. And I think I'll just end up eating the difference is what it's going to come down to.
Sure.
And if I've got great tenants. The anchor tenants that we've got are amazing. If they're all situated, and then everybody needs to understand too, if you come in and you lease space from me, the first 2 years, I'm not making any money. Everybody thinks, oh man, it's so awesome. You've got 12 tenants. The first 2 years, you can throw away almost 2.5 of those years that you're just covering the cost of the cost of getting them in there. And then it starts to make sense.
And break down for everyone, itemize what that is from the broker commission to your upfit to all that.
So if I've got a tenant that is paying me $5,000 a month, well, that $5,000 a month is $60,000 a year. It's going to cost for a cold, dark shell of gravel floor. It'll cost me $180,000 to $220,000 to get a tenant in there because they're going to want that TI to build it out. Most businesses aren't going to come to you and say, hey, you know what? I'll trade you for a rent reduction because I'll do that all day long. You want free rent for 3 years?
Do the upfit, yeah.
If you do the upfit, I'm good. But most businesses aren't going to do that. They don't have the cash flow to do that. They're going to say, hey,
expertise in commercial construction.
They don't want to deal with it. And really, I don't want them to go in there and mess around and do that.
Yeah.
I would rather be in charge and make sure we do it right and not cut any corners.
Yep.
9 times out of 10, you're going to end up providing an allowance for them to come in. And let's say the allowance is $180,000. Well, if they're only paying $60,000 a year in their rent, then your first 3 years are a wash to get that back. Now, granted, if you're paying for the TI, then maybe your rate's a little bit higher, and that's fine. But still, you're 2.5 years in before you even sniff some profit out of that.
Yeah, plus the tenant broker that brought them, and if you had a listing broker, there's 6% right there. What kind of leases are you signing here? Are you going like 5s?
5s and 7s.
7s, yeah.
And it's, most of our leases were new businesses. The jiu-jitsu school was a established business. The chiropractor was new. The yoga was fairly new when they got in here. So it's tough for a new business to come in and bite off 7 years. But a lot of the times when we renew, we'll go from 5 to 7 and we'll give them a little bit of a break if they go 7 years. Because now for me, 5 years goes a lot faster than people think.
Yeah.
I would much rather have 7 years not to worry about it, touch it, deal with it, and let them go that way when they renew.
7 years is also just a lot for the landlord to bite off for a new business on there. Because I mean, in your head, you're like, I know what it's like to be a new business, and do I think they have them? Are they going to make it right? If like yoga, you'd be like, how many fucking yoga studios can Concord have? I don't know, but they come in, you make them sign personal guarantees.
I did with 2 of them, only if they're really new and I put a ton of money into them.
Sure.
I put a ton of money into them, then I'll ask for a personal guarantee.
Yeah.
And really, nobody should be surprised at that anymore because nobody's getting money from a bank without a personal guarantee. Nobody.
And we're generally able to negotiate for most clients. Like, okay, let's say it's a 7-year lease. They want a personal guarantee. PG for 100% the first 3 years, just so the landlord feels comfortable, as long as you don't have any hiccups in your rent payment. And then maybe after that, it's just a 1-year rolling guarantee. So at most, you're liable for one, or do some kind of waterfall or some stair step kind of thing. Because that's all the landlord. The PG is just there because the landlord just wants an extra layer of protection, which it really isn't anyway. Because if you're broke, you're broke.
Yeah.
Like, what does a PG do? If you owe me 4 more years at $60,000 a year and you're broke, there's nothing. I mean, we can go to court. I can do the whole thing. But at the end of the day, I just need to get back to work and get another fucking tenant in here.
Yeah.
Yeah. So everyone's like, the personal guarantee. I'm like, why wouldn't you? It's like a gym owner. A gym owner's like, you have someone go ahead and give you maybe their ACH information because if they can cancel a credit card anytime. So getting ACH information is an easier way to make sure you're getting that money each month.
Yeah.
It's the same fucking thing. The nice thing is your business is tried and true. You've been doing this over a decade. In the day-to-day, more headaches on the gym side or the real estate side?
It kind of ebbs and flows. I think now it's I'm able to focus a little more on the gym, but what it makes me realize, and I think this is what I stress the most to people that I talk to about it, is I look at how much work it takes to make a $30,000 a month. And then I look at how much work it takes to walk the mailbox and pick up my rent checks. And it's like, man, I mean, people have to understand the difference between 50-hour work weeks versus, there's some headache, but man,
the mailbox money,
the upside to passive revenue, there is nothing like it. There's nothing better than that until someone, and the hard part is, when it was $600 a month, and then it was $1,200 a month, you're like, man, am I ever going to get there? But like we talked about before, if people just can buy into the long game and just start, whatever that is, if you don't start, you're never going to create any passive revenue. But if I can just start and I can slowly start to set some goals, then I can build my life around being a little more frugal for a little while and say, you know what, I'm going to cut this out until I can make my $3,000 a month passive revenue goal. And then it becomes a $5,000 a month. Then you get a new tenant and you're like, okay, maybe I can get $10,000 a month. And before you know it, you're 8 years in and you're finally getting to that point where you're like, okay, this is so much easier than trying to go service, 50 hours of 500 or 600 members, So
take me back to the beginning because, you get $2.2 million loan and it was SBA in the beginning. So it's 10% down. So $220,000.
Yep.
Okay. Think about that. Like, how many years had Vitality been in business at that point?
4.
Okay, 4 years. Was that cash that you guys had saved up? I mean, did you guys deplete everything? Did you do a friends and family loan? How did you raise the money initially? Because there's a lot of people that you could be in business for 10 years, save $10,000 a year, right? I can just do the math to figure out how much. There's always also, most gyms have 1 or 2 very wealthy members that have an affinity for the owner. And I'm like, there are people that will also go 50-50. Like in my deal, me and my business partner, we went 50-50. He was a member. He wanted to get in the commercial. I wanted to get in the commercial. He was going to have to pay 35% down on a traditional bank loan because he doesn't own a small business. I got us at 10% SBA. So I had value. He had value. We come 50-50 with cash. How did you get started with that first? Because that first big nut is the down payment on the loan that a lot of people can't reconcile in their head.
I think back and if you talk to my wife, she'll tell you some stories. Man, I was really, really disciplined. I use the word disciplined. She uses the word frugal, whatever you want to call it. But when I was in the Marine Corps, tax-free deployments, I saved all of it. When I feel bad, I think back and I feel so bad I was never hard on her. She knew how important it was for me to save money. I wanted to make sure that we were in a situation that when we got out of the Marine Corps, we had some things, had some opportunities. So I remember being deployed coming home, and she would have the same, like she was making like a sandwich for breakfast and lunch, and having like never going out to eat, never spending money. And I honestly think I don't know, I think she was spending like $150 a week while I was deployed. And so we saved so much money, and that money we didn't touch it. When the gym came, me and her did everything. So our profit margins were ridiculous. When we first started, the first 24 months, we were printing money, but we were working 80 hours a week. It didn't matter though. So we had saved up the money we needed. The issue was we paid the 220, but when we initially got our financing, I knew that we weren't going to be able to buy it or build it for what our initial number was. It was 1.79 or 1.78. That was the max that they were going to give me. So the gamble that is complete stupidity, but I said, okay, well, that we can build it for that. And Marty and I talked, and he said, dude, you can't build this for that. I said, I know, but I think what'll happen is we'll be 1.79 million in, we'll be 65, 70% there, and they have a choice to make.
And the bank's just, they're either called a note on you.
They're either going to take it over and have to finish it themselves, or they're going to give me more money. And you think back to that, and it was such a dumb, like, how do you think that that's a good play? But I was so convinced that it would work.
It's so conflicting because you're so disciplined.
I know.
And you like, I can see you like you're probably analytical. You have a spreadsheet for many things. I can see all that. And to throw that Hail Mary.
I know. But it was the 10th bank, and we were like, you know what? I'm not doing this again. I don't care what we have to do. This is going to work. And I remember having the conversation, and the president of the bank had called me and said, hey, what are you doing? What's going on? And I said, hey, listen, sir, here's what's happening. I'm short. He's like, how short are we talking here? And man, when I said the words out of my mouth, when I said 750, he was like, oh man. So yeah, it was, he wasn't super pumped about it, but I knew if we could just open the doors, it would work. So it did. They gave us the money, and we put another. I think I was required to put another 120 down, 125,000 down, and that was the part that really hurt, because then that went from whatever cushion we had, whatever like safety net we had, was gone. Yep. I mean, we were literally zeroed. Everything we owned was gone. Everything. That was the first spot that I was like, oh, we really might have overplayed my hand here. But I think there's some truth to, everybody likes to put their foot in the water and kind of just test and see, man, let me make sure it's not too deep. And I think that you got to jump in and just see if you can swim, because I think if everybody has these safety nets, everybody has these backup plans, it's like the part-time, I'm going to be a firefighter, but I'm going to open a CrossFit gym. Mm-hmm. It just doesn't work, because you're never fully committed, and you don't have the fear of like, hey, if this doesn't work, we have nothing. Yeah. And I think that fear is what people need to kind of get them through some of that. And I can't tell you how many nights that I went to bed just staring at the ceiling like, man, I don't know what's going to happen, but we'll see.
Our appraisal came in, $280, almost $300,000 under. And, that was our cush as well on each side, and had to completely, go to ramen noodle sandwiches, type of scenario. And it's the only thing that's ever kept me in that scenario from not worrying too much, because when you go all in on something like you and me did with the gym and fitness and training and coaching, I'm like, worst case scenario, I go to broke. I've money didn't make me, so broke won't break me. I'll start coaching again in the fucking park. I'll make enough for a decent apartment, and then I'll do it all. If I got to repeat the last 7 years, it would suck. I would be I'd be a miserable son of a bitch.
Yeah.
But I could do it. I have the skill set, because that's the one thing you can always lose money. I can't lose the skill set I acquired. And then it would just be on me to just pick myself up and be like, all right, just go apply that skill set and do it again. And now actually you're smarter. So it took you 7 years last time when you're dumb as fuck. You're smarter now. You probably get done in 3, yeah. Right? How did the appraisal process? So everyone, this is the big thing. I got a lot of guys, this is where they get stuck. The bank funds them for, let's say it's an existing building. Let's say we're going to give you, the sales price is $1 million. Well, you fucking better hope it appraises, within that, very close. If it falls under 300, that comes in at 700, the bank's only going to fund you to the amount, it's called LTV, loan to value, to the amount that it fucking appraised for, not for the sales price. But this was a hypothetical, right? You guys, did you have to get that initial aspirational appraisal?
Yeah, the issue that we ran into, and especially when you're building, the system isn't set up to be conducive for small businesses to build, because the hidden cost just to get started.
The preliminary stuff. Yeah.
So no, I can go to Stu Brower, who's a GC, and say, hey, I need you to price out this project. Well, you're not going to take it serious unless you have a set of stamp plans.
Mm-hmm.
And I can't get a set of stamp plans unless I pay $92,000 to the architect. So I can go to the architect and get a set of preliminary plans, but the GC doesn't want to work off of preliminary plans because he's going to put a number on that based on what that contract price is going to be. So he's going to say, okay, cool, but it might be a 30% either way.
Swing, yeah.
And the bank the bank won't look at that number. We had to go to the architect, find an architect, pay the $92,000, have the plans drawn, go to Marty, and then Venture would look at this. And because, he's my best friend, he said, hey, here's what we can do to hit this number. That's what we'll do to the bank. So he did it the right way, but we both knew we were going to change some things. We both knew we were going to add a mezzanine. We both knew that we were going to expand a little bit. So the bank got their plans. They sent an appraisal to look at the plans, which is ridiculous. And they said, okay, yes, you're good. You can start. They started funding it, and then we just started slowly
making change orders. And yeah.
And, I didn't pay $1 for any change orders. Marty and I would walk it, and, he's a genius. So he'd say, hey, what if he did this, this, and this? You need to think about this over here. And we'd say, okay, yeah, let's do it. And we'd catch it before it got too far down. And that's what people think. You can't work with your friends. You just have to have the right friends. When people say you can't do business with your friends, I would say, if you can't, then you either have the wrong friends or you're not as close as you thought you were, because I should be able to tell Marty, hey man, listen, this is what's going on. I can't have this. I can't pay on this timeline. And he's going to say, okay, cool, let's figure it out. And then that's what we did for 24 months.
No, I agree. You hear that in the CrossFit scene and the gym scene. Don't get a business partner, that kind of scenario. I think all those scenarios can work. It's just communication and expectation. If he does something to piss you off and you don't say anything and you let that build for a couple months, that shit can go wrong. And even in this role where you're the GC, I don't know dick about GCs. You tell me what I don't know, and I'll tell you. I'll be fully honest with what I want and what I don't want. And as long as there's that's open and it's not throwing shade or being an asshole, no, that's just the information each party needs to be successful. And sometimes it can be a little combative, but there's some people that have a real fucking hard time giving someone advice, news or information that they're not going to like.
Yeah.
And I feel like guys like you and me, I don't think we've ever had a problem giving somebody information that we thought they weren't going to like.
I think the problem you run into is there's so many people that don't like to admit that they're not smart, not good at something, or not smart about something. And to me, man, I'm never the smartest guy in the room. I just like to listen and figure out who's smarter than me. And guess what? I'm gonna listen to them and figure out how I can steal as much knowledge as I can, and then apply that to make my life easier. And as long as you don't come across as the guy that knows it all, people are really genuinely want to see you succeed and see you be successful. And I think people just have the wrong approach, the mindset of, it's my building. I have to be the smartest about everything. Man, you don't. And with you, I think that's interesting because this gym real estate company, so many people don't understand site selection. They don't understand how big a space needs to be. And if you had somebody that could come in there and say, hey, listen, here's my thoughts on this. Here's how big of a space that you really need. And you could sit down and they could explain to you what programs they're going to run. Do they want to have a multi-tenant building? Do they want to have a PT studio? What do they want to do with it? And then you could sit down and you can sit back completely unaffected by all the other factors and draw out a space and say, hey, here's what this looks like. Versus me, who I had a space in my head, so I was trying to justify all the things I want to do with the space that I already thought I needed. I didn't have anybody to come in there and say, have you thought about this? And that's where I think that the value is from somebody that is going to work with a broker that knows nothing about CrossFit, nothing about fitness, no matter what that is. Forget about it, man. That guy can add zero value in what he's going to tell you what the cam should be and tell you what the term should be. And then you're going to say, hey, I'd like to meet at 1 p.m. And then he's going to call and be like, hey, my client wants to meet at 1 p.m. That's the extent of the relationship you're going to have with a traditional broker, where you have the ability to come in there and say, hey, I screwed this up a long time ago. Here's what you need to do. Here's the way that you should construct the the size of the building. Here's what you should do with the interior. Here's how big the bathrooms need to be. Oh, you want to have 12 showers? Cool. You need 3, whatever that is, you know?
I got a guy bought a building. I didn't work with him when he was doing the building, but the building's open and he's got 3 spots out front, and he let his broker convince him what the sizing should be of these suites that he created. And there's vanilla squares, and the idea was, okay, I want to have something like yoga, right? I want to have something maybe like Cairo, something synergistic, maybe something food, beverage, retail, something like that, not a full restaurant or anything. And he let the broker pick the size of these suites. And then now I get the project, and I'm like, suite A, so that's 3,600 square feet. What was planning on there? Like yoga. It's like 3,600 square feet for yoga. The highest operational capacity. A yoga mat takes up 35 square feet with a human on it. And 3,600? He's like, yeah, we're not getting any hits on it at all for yoga. It's just like, well, no fuck, dude. Like, that's fucking 3 times bigger than what you need. It's just little things like that. Like, and that's the hardest thing I tell people. When you're a gym owner and you buy a building, you got to take the gym owner hat off. A lot of times you got to just start thinking, you got to be thinking in this 20-year, 30-year window. What will this place be when I'm not the person to do it? Or if I am building out extra space to have rent roll, I got to think about what could these spaces be. And it can't be like, oh, it's going to be perfect if it's this one thing. Mm-hmm. It's got to be a size that could probably fit 12 different suitors for that, right? Like the spin, like, and I fucked up on the spin studio at Urban. It doesn't sound like it'd be too complicated putting a coffee shop and a spin studio there. Like, probably, like, that's not going to work from an audio acoustic standpoint, even with all the extra fucking soundproofing we put in. But we purposely put them on an end cap of the side of the building and away from things, and in the way where the HVAC was to hum them out and all this other shit. It's just all these things that you don't think of. And God, it's the broker. I don't expect him to know that shit either. He's literally doing your appointment and then going and leasing out a fucking Subway down the street and fuck it at 2:00. It's just not what they do. In your experience working with brokers, the ones that are bringing you the tenants, the ones you've listed, have you had overall good experiences? I mean, for most part, my experience has been good on my side. I can't speak the same for other people, but
I've never worked with a broker yet. Every space that we've gotten, I did myself. There's an attorney who's a really, really good guy. One of my members referred me to him, and I've had him look at my leases.
Yeah.
And that's the only thing that I've done. And we've just had, when we first opened, there were so many people that wanted to occupy the spaces that I didn't need to go out and search for them. The church kind of fell in our lap. We got really fortunate with the initial kind of draw of tenants. Now, 2 years from now, 3 years from now, I'll probably have to go on that road, because I think I was much hungrier 8 years ago to cut the cost down to where now I'm like, you know what? What's it going to cost me to not have to deal with the headache of trying to go acquire a new tenant? Maybe I'll pay that, But
Sure.
That's the beauty of, if you can get your passive revenue to a number that you're happy with, then you can start to make concessions on things that you might not have done in the past, because now you've got that cushion back. You've got some of your time is worth a little more to you now. And that's kind of where I'm at now. My kids are 15 and 10, and I don't want to spend, 13 hours here at the gym. I want to spend 9 hours at the gym. I want to go home, and I want to have dinner with my family.
Yeah.
And there's things that I used to do that I don't want to do anymore. And I think the hard part for me, and I think every gym owner is going to feel the same way, is how do I take my foot off the gas without taking my foot off the gas? I'm where I am now. I'm lucky to be where I am. I'm fortunate. We've had a successful run, but we got that way because of the mentality that I had. And now, by taking my foot off the gas, now I'm worried, man, am I pulling back too much? Am I missing the mark by not chasing things like I used to chase? And that's a hard conversation that people have to have. Is I think some people do that too early on, and they have a little bit of success, and instead of riding that wave and trying to get it while you can, they pull back and they want to be hands off, and it's too soon. And then some people, my old man is 72 years old, and he's still, deep in all kinds of things. And I'm like, man, I don't want to do that, because now it's too late. Now you've missed, he loves it. He needs to work off that. He loves the stress of it. That's not me.
Yeah.
I'll do something always, but I will have nothing stressful in my life. I will build my life to where it's not stress, so that I don't have to do that. So you're trying to find that in between. And I think that if you're a gym only, you're going to have a really hard time finding that in between. If you can have some passive income, and maybe you don't have a multi-tenant building, but maybe you've got a gym, but you're able to invest in some real estate. You're able to do some different things that create some passive revenue. that will allow you to make that transition a little bit easier. It's really tough to do if you're just a one revenue stream business.
What was what was the first thing that put in your head back at the original Vitality? Commercial real estate was the long-term wealth play.
Man, I don't know. The Benhams, Dave and Jason Benham are two of the smartest guys I've known, and I was lucky enough to have them be like the first 5 members I had in the gym. They were the only ones that understood that I was like, man, I understand what they're talking about. I understand the way that they look at finances. I understand why they don't spend money on flashy things. That was never me, and that made a lot of sense. And then I started looking at what they were doing. That was when residential was big, and they had a lot of rental homes. I didn't want to go that route, so I said, man, if I could build a building, why wouldn't I just put it all under one roof where I can control everything, and being the obsessive compulsive, guy that I am, it made perfect sense. So I could just, I didn't have to travel all over the place to see what the investment was. It was right here.
Yeah. I got buddies that, especially with Airbnb, and they're like, I've got 30 Airbnbs. I'm like, that sounds like my fucking nightmare, dude. 30, like, Airbnb, short-term rentals, or fucking even just regular residential rentals, 1-year leases, and I'm having to find that new piece of shit every year that treats my place like it's a rental, because it is, and we all know what happened. Yeah, I'm just like, fuck. I mean, listen, that's not to take away from anyone who does that. It just, that was something, same thing, because I had that was my bad. I was like, I have to do something here in this Guy Kawasaki kind of like theme, right? Like where I'm like, okay, I definitely want to go the passive route. If it wasn't going to be commercial for you, what would it just been get a good financial planner and just, because you've been doing this for 15 years now with the gym thing. You probably could have, as diligent as you are, shoveled the money away, invested it well, and had a nice size little nest egg. You've obviously put that on steroids here. What do you think you would have done if this wouldn't have panned out?
I probably would, I was a big index fund guy. I never liked the idea. I can't remember what the book, the Bogleheads or whatever it was, the Bogleheads Guide to Investing. And I started looking at all the small little percentages that these financial advisors were taking, these managed funds were taking, and it just made so much sense. Why would I pay somebody else to manage the money? Why wouldn't I just do an index fund where I can watch it myself, pay attention to it, and not have to deal with it? So I probably have a quarter of my stuff into that, and I just that would probably what I would do. I would put everything I owned into that and just
hang out. You just index fund is great. You can do a target date one, and it just kind of goes with that as a glide rate. And but it's a 30-40 year thing, right?
Yeah.
It's so okay, I got to keep making this money and doing this gym thing. And that's like when I show up, I got to go speak in Nashville for Push Presses thing, and I'm presenting as the gym real estate company. And it's a depressing kind of opener, but it's like, if you own a gym, I would love to hear everyone's retirement plan. And if it's like, I'm going to sell the gym, the business, it better be fucking remarkable, right? Like, a lot of people aren't buying used gyms, especially when the gym owner still has a job within it, right? Like, if it's, I'm going to franchise or whatever, it's like, go talk to Brandon Cullen and Matt about, like, go see how that's a fucking 15-year gig as well.
Yeah.
Like, but yeah, real estate to me is just the most natural, the fastest way to wealth if you own a gym. I've got guys in California right now wanted to expand the building, like wanted to like upfit and like put on another couple thousand square feet to the building. The landlord gave the okay on it. $250,000 loan, could not get it. Simultaneously, this individual is going for their second PhD, got a loan to go to UCal Berkeley, get his second PhD while he owns the gym. And that was what, $180,000 student loan. He got that. Also got approved for $1.8 million loan to buy a building. Couldn't get the $200,000 to expand the motherfucker. Because the bank's like, I don't care, it's only $200,000. Where do we get our money back if you don't make it? This is post-COVID. Gyms are just left the sour taste in a bank for stuff like that. But on something like real estate, absolutely. A student loan, of course, they're going to fucking take your money on that bullshit every time.
Yeah.
But on real estate, he was able to go and get almost $2 million based on the merit of his business. And I tell guys, I'm like, listen, your gym kind of hits an apex. Like, every business has a cycle, right? There's infancy and maturity. And then we get to this stage where, like, that's probably the ceiling for you. It's going to be a decline at some point. We don't know when or how, but that's the moment when you think you're at that apex. That's when you want to borrow money from the bank. That's when you're going to get the most leverage, the best rate. You have more opportunity. And I've had people like waited too long and then lose 2 coaches, a fucking client fucks a married person, but like, and there's decimation and now they're down $12,000 a month of revenue. It's like, you missed your shot. Like, you missed your moment. You flew too close to the sun.
If you show a bank, if they see a couple months of a decline, even if it's $1,500 difference. It's crazy, the red flags that come up from that.
Yeah. When the bank was looking at me for mine, I got denied by the first couple banks, and then we got approved by a couple, and then we picked ours. I actually picked a slightly higher interest rate because I liked the relationship with the banker better. It was way less transactional. He actually came out to the site, walked it with me, came to my gym, watched me coach a class, was genuinely interested in what it was I was doing. Wasn't just looking at it on paper. And I always really appreciated that personal touch. Factory, okay, so they just literally come right in here. That's it.
They do. And when they first came in, he just needed one weekend. He needed one Sunday because they double booked the Embassy Suites. And I said, okay, man, no problem. Come on in. And they had like 45 people. Small little setup, 45 chairs. I said, that's easy. Monday, he came in and said, hey, the church, the members, they loved it. They really liked it. They loved the look of it. They loved the space.
They loved the look and the space of the gym. Like, what?
He said, man, can we figure out a way to make this work? I said, dude, I don't know if this makes sense. Like, so we sat down and we agreed to a 2-year lease, I think, at the beginning. And by the end of 2 years, they had 500 people in here. And I think for Easter, they had over 1,000. They had 1,000 people in here. So they come in Saturday at noon. They pipe and drape everything. They bring in a legit huge stage, monitor boards, and then 900 to 1,000 chairs.
I remember I was supposed to be back because we were setting up for that workout with Lululemon, and I just watched. I remember just sitting here, just like taking my time, loading those torpedoes up, being like, I cannot believe what I'm looking at. The amount of people who have said to me, man, I wish I could find someone to use my gym at, the middle of the day on a Sunday, right? And I've tried everything. I've tried renting out gyms to AA meetings, fucking everything you could think of, anything like but women's book reading clubs, the most off the wall shit. And then here you are, you've got a full budget. And how many, do they just do one service on a Sunday? That's it.
One service. And then, we restructured their lease because they want to run youth at night. So before, I'd get my gym back around 2 p.m. on Sunday, they'd have it done. And then they wanted to run a youth in here from 6 to 8. So then I started not getting it done back to 9 or 10 o'clock. And then they wanted their office. So they've got an office space in here that they rent out, and it's 5,000 square feet of office space upstairs. They needed a broadcast room. So they've got a broadcast room. So we'll check it out on the way out. But they've got 16 monitors, and they control all of the TVs downstairs and lights. They hang. They've hung hundreds of lights in here. They've got 8 containers out there that they've moved around. It's unbelievable. And this is their 5th year. So
yeah, again, you just think of the dead time in this building when there's nothing else going on, and what a fucking. So much of this it's all hard work, good timing, good connections, which just equals luck, right? Like luck isn't something like you're sitting in your home, sitting on your dick, and something awesome just happens to you, right? Like it's where, how much are you moving in the fucking world? What good are you doing to some other people? What good shit have you thrown out there that comes back to you? And then how fucking hard have you worked for it? And you can work so goddamn hard on one vertical and it doesn't pan out, and then this other thing happens. Like, oh, that got lucky. Like, there's some energy getting carried over from that other fucking thing, right?
Yeah, I think it's taking the time because it's a hard thing to figure out. When someone says, man, can we rent your gym on a Saturday or Sunday for church? Your initial reaction might be yes. And then you start diving into how do you set this up? And it's like, okay, maybe it's more trouble than it's worth. If you just sit down and figure it out, the numbers are the numbers. You tell me what it's worth to have someone come in here on a Sunday and do it. Now, the good thing is, I knew that the pastor, Andy, was a perfectionist. So when you come back in here on Sunday, like they had 1,000 people in here. Monday morning when I come in, you will not notice one thing. They scrub the whole floor. They clean everything up. Now there's things. People spilling coffee on the turf. 15 years ago, that would have drove me crazy. Now, like, okay, you know what? At some point, we'll replace the turf.
Sure.
And it's such a good relationship and good deal. I think it's a great deal for him. I think it's a great deal for me. And anytime it's a win-win, then it becomes really hard to leave. It becomes really hard to. Nobody wants to get rid of it. It's like Brent, who runs my EagleFit program. He's got a great deal. I don't think he's ever going to leave.
Yeah.
And he knows he's indispensable. Like, I can't. It's if you can set it up to where everybody wins, it makes it so much easier. Versus, for example, we had this
this huge space upstairs that the church's headquarters is at, their offices, we had a business called Repucom in here. Repucom did they were a sports marketing company.
They did the NPR, Net Promoter Score stuff. I remember coming in here for that presentation.
Yes. Super good people. There's like seven guys working out of that 5,000 square foot office. And the person that was the VP had just happened to be a friend of ours and a client of ours for 6 years. So when we structured this lease, it was an amazing lease. I mean, it was awesome. We paid a ton of money to get them in there, but I mean, they were paying like, I don't know, $80, $100 a month for that space. It was awesome. And it was a 5-year lease, but we didn't know what the sound was going to be like. So when they signed the lease, they had a 3-year out that they could exercise just because of whether
the noise of the gym was too big. Yeah.
Whatever. I didn't even think about it. And I said, yeah, let's put it in there. And everybody was happy. And we were just rolling. And Repucom got bought out by Nielsen Ratings. So Nielsen came in and they started to clean house and they started moving people around. And I lost my VP. He went somewhere else. And a new guy came in and he's like, dude, this space is incredible. Why do we have this space? We have 5 people in here, 5,000 square feet. And I was like, oh man. And he asked for a copy of the lease and we had like, I don't know, a month before the option came up. And we were sitting at my desk and it was the Friday, they had till Friday at 4:30 to exercise their option. And I'm literally sitting at my desk, it's 4:25.
Why were you here? I would have been gone, cell phone off, right? Like
I know. And I'm like, there's no way. It's 4:26. I'm texting my wife because she knew I was stressed out about it. I'm like, we're good. It's 4:26. Like a bad movie, dude. 4:29. My phone rings. And I'm laughing to myself like, there's no way.
Yeah.
I pick it up. They're like, oh, this is so-and-so from Nielsen Resources. I said, hey, how you doing? So we just want to let you know that we just emailed and faxed over our option to terminate. Just want to give you a heads up. Like, you got to be kidding. So anyway, and then, 3 months after that, the church decided, you know what, we needed a place to stay.
Yeah.
So they took it at a much lower rate.
Yeah.
And it's one of those things that if you can just be a little more, a little more flexible, which that's not who I am, but I'm getting better at that because things just change so much. And if you can just control the emotional attachments, like you always talk about when people get emotionally attached to members leaving.
Yeah.
You can't.
Yeah.
And same thing goes when things don't go your way, you just got to figure out like, hey, crying and whining about it's not going to fix it. You just figure out what's the best way forward and you just start moving and you pivot.
Last thing I want to hit from you, with everything you got going on, obviously you're doing the weed building in Detroit, which I fucking love, and you got this thing. What else are you also looking at in real estate? This is passive, but it's with you being the landlord here, this is as active as it gets. I've looked at a lot of multifamily, kind of thrown in a chunk of that, which I like. Charlotte's multifamily scene is not going to take a hit anytime soon. I think that's safe. It's easy. You've shared some of this stuff. I think it was storage-based type scenario. So what other things do you look at? Because obviously, like once you get into real estate and you were like a schmuck like me can make it, and like a guy like you, we have no business in this world. Then when I look at funds and stuff with people at them that actually know what the fuck they're doing, I'm like, oh, well, that's like whether it's an opportunity zone fund or whatever it is. So what else are you looking at, and would you invest your money in now everyone thinks you've quote unquote made it here, yet you're still looking at other things too? Because again, you can't just take all this money home with you. You don't want to pay that much in taxes. So
the fund that I've been looking at and I got into early December last year, it's a fund that focuses on 3 spaces. You've got your storage, you've got multifamily, and then you've got student housing in big Division I markets. And I really liked the way that they operate. They stay away from the volatile markets like New York, New Jersey, California. They're working more in North Carolina, South Carolina, Florida, Texas, Georgia. And what they do is they will find these deals. And this fund that I got in was a $100 million fund. And you buy into it. If you're qualified, you buy into it. And you get 6% a month. And then you get 6% on the back end, and then you get a portion of the upside of what the sale comes at the end of it. So it's a 5-year hold. And what I looked at was if you could invest for 3 straight years, if you can suck it up, save the money, invest for 3 years, by year 5, your first year comes back, and now you've got that income that comes back. You've recaptured your initial investment. You can roll, works out to be 70% of that into your year 5. Then year 6, your second year investment comes back, and you can almost create this revolving door of wealth that can build. And as you make a little more money, you can invest more money. So I think the minimum was $250, and you could invest as much as you wanted to. But if you could get that $250 to roll and be able to set that in motion, then you can really set it up to where you've got a windfall every year after year. And if you wanted to get out and buy something different, you'd have your nut right there, maybe $330,000, $340,000 at the end of that 5-year cycle, to where you can either roll it back into a new fund or take that out.
Take your gains and
take your gains and go. So I like the idea of a very hands-off approach where I don't have to deal with it. But I also like the idea of getting some monthly cash flow. So, that $250, it only makes me $1,250 a month. But all of a sudden, if you're in 3 of those funds, now you're starting to get
Sure.
a little more aggressive. So that's what's kind of exciting me now is if you can find the right people. I really like the group that I met and I talked to. They I don't know. I've always been a guy. I don't like people that drive flashy cars. Do business with those guys. I like, if you're wearing a Timex Ironman, I know,
then I'm your guy. Yeah.
And I think that's just something for me. And so that's for the last probably 8 or 9 months. That's what I've been looking at. If the weed guys break into, they're actually trying to get to North Carolina, because I think North Carolina and Florida will be medicinal. What will be the next kind of dominoes to fall. I don't know that you'll ever find deals like that one back in Michigan, but if I did, I would mortgage everything I owned.
Yeah. It's funny. The number one asset class that you see on the East Coast that's being purchased up in non-medical marijuana legal states is warehouses. And you have those guys buying up flex space warehouses in states like North Carolina to the fucking nines. And they're just going to buy it in cash because they sit on all this cash. A lot of it still can't go into banks, right? A lot of it, right? So they buy this stuff and they're like, well, eventually be legal. And now I've got my 7 grow houses outside of Asheville, right? So like when I'm looking for spots and people are like, man, I want industrial. That's easy to find. I'm like, kinda. Sometimes like there's a lot of people buying up a ton of industrial, which wasn't a thing previous, to 08, and then the crash happened. And I honestly, CrossFit gyms revived a lot of industrial, like the seeking for industrial space. Otherwise it was just storage, manufacturing, shit that causes your environmental phase 1 study to fucking trigger and having to get a phase 2, those kind of uses.
And I think you're in a good spot for these gyms that, again, that's a great reason for people to look at investing into real estate and buying their buildings, because there's never going to be a need to not have this type of space.
Yeah.
It's always going to be there. And to your point about, we're not one suitor that's going to be here. There's a ton of people that can come in here and do something like this and use this type of space. So this space next door, this gravel lot, we had a guy come in and say, hey, I've got a bunch of these 40-foot trailers I can't store in my backyard anymore because I'm getting charged by the city. Would you let me store them here? And I came back and I sat down and I was like trying to figure out I made a couple phone calls to my neighbor. Here's a storage guy. And I said, what would you charge? I'm not trying to steal business from you, but you can't fit a 40-foot trailer anyway. What would you charge? And we looked at it and I said, man, okay. And so I charged him $1,100 and he comes and parks 9 rentable trailers in there. And it's like, you never know, but space and is never going to be something that people...
They're not building more land. No, they're not building more land. And what was an industrial, now, like, no one ever thought we'd all go to warehouses and drink craft beer, right? Like, or anything like that. Like the use cases, the nice thing, like everyone wanted to win the beauty contest in commercial real estate. Like I go to all these meetups and these commercial real estate things of guys that I don't know. And they ask me why I'm there and I'm dressed like this. And like, all these guys now are eating fucking crow because they all tried to win the beauty pageant in Office Space from 2014 all the way to what happened in COVID. And now they're all sitting with their dick in their hands. And, industrial is way more interesting now, right? And multifamily is obviously, but it's, it's cycles. It ebbs and flows, right? Bodybuilding was really lame when you and me got on the CrossFit. Look at the resurgence of bodybuilding now. Everything is cyclical when you look at that. So don't ever call something a thing yet or say it's dead or whatever. Most things revive themselves on a long enough timeline and they come back into vogue. But Steve, man, I appreciate your time, dude. You were absolutely, you were one of my favorite stories to tell people of from you. Trust me, you can do this. I know someone who's admit that he's not a smart businessman. I remember when I had you speak at the Self-Made Summit, it was just one of those you're the most humble, and everyone's like, I'm coming here to see Steve speak. And I for some reason that blows your mind. I think that you have such a great business brain on you. It's I like this simple brilliance of people. I don't have an MBA from fucking Brown, but I just see the world for what it is. I know what I don't know, and I go find out what I know. That's something I've always respected the fuck out of you, because I feel the very same way. I am no smarter than the version of me 6 hours ago, but hopefully I'm smarter than the version of me yesterday. And that's the only thing I can just incrementally fucking move up I'm never going to be as smart as someone doing commercial real estate for 20 years. But hopefully I just kind of, you dive in, you learn shit, you fuck up, you do it wrong. And that's the way you learn. I've always really appreciated that about you. And dude, this is just such an amazing spot that you created, man. Not only is inspiration as a gym owner, seeing what's possible, but also just, to step in a whole other industry. You killed it in the gym industry. Absolutely, you are as relative and of a landlord, in the landlord, as anyone else that owns a shopping plaza in Concord right now. Realistically, you got 12 tenants. The amount, it's phenomenal, dude. I'm so happy for you, dude.
I really appreciate it.
So happy.
It's been a wild ride. And I'll tell you I'll finish one last story. I was coming back on a trip with my wife, and I was logging into American Airlines to get on a plane, and we were coming home. It sent me this message that said, "Hey, you can upgrade for $92 to first class." And my wife and I don't ever fly first class. She doesn't even ask me. It's not even it's never even a question. I said,
but Uly's takes an exit row.
I'll take an extra.
Yeah. For if you guys are on the audio right now, Steve's only 8'15".
And on the way out there, we got an exit row, and it was just the most uncomfortable seat. I was just bitching the whole time. On the way back, I was like, man, you know what? $92. I think I'm going to do it. And I buy these upgrades, and I show my wife. I'm like, hey, we're
Daddy splurged.
She's like, are you serious? And it was like a kid in a candy.
Yeah.
Get on that flight. And it's just funny, you spend so much time, and I think we're finally at that spot to where,
you don't know how to enjoy your wealth.
Yeah.
I get it. It's I don't know what it's like to make not have to worry about, is this going to ever, because you make some money when you don't have it and you're like, am I going to lose it?
Yeah.
Will it ever come back? No, this is the only time I'm ever going to have this. And then you're like, okay, it's been a little bit of time and I haven't completely lost it all. So that's good. I hope you have more first class trips in your future, buddy.
My wife. Well, I appreciate you, brother. Thanks.
Thank you, brother.